Welcome, everyone. Welcome to the second edition of the VOD Market Day. Thank you very much for the opportunity, Pascal, to be in here. It is really a special event for us. It's a special event for everyone and in a special condition. So it has been amazing the job that you and your team did for helping us in having this day, which is dedicated to VOD platforms, especially European VOD platforms. The event is organized by EUROVOD, the European Association of VOD Platforms, which is represented here by some of these members. The conference is the first part of the day. The second part will be held at the beginning of the VOD Market Bridge in the entry with some one-to-one meetings. So I really have to thank a lot also the European Commission and the media program, because if the VOD marketplace is taking place, is also really thanks to them. The VOD marketplace day is taking place during another event, the fourth workshop, European VOD meetings, which finishing today, and that has had place in San Servolo Island. I would like to thank very much Michael Gubbins, who is the moderator of our panel, but also that produced EUROVOD report. It's the first report that we did regarding European independent VOD platform in this special year. So the outcome of the report are really, really interesting for all the sectors, so not only for VOD platforms. I would like to thank a lot also Agustina Lumi, who will present afterward our other project, EUROVOD Pro, that is a new project that has been also co-financed by the media program of the Creative Europe program. So EUROVOD Pro will be another occasion for meeting, for networking, for bringing online not only the market exchange, but to develop a new knowledge economy around the distribution on his diversity of content and of channel of the European VOD sector especially. So, Pascal, I will pass on you the floor, and then I will let Michael take over the rest of the conference. There wants to be a break, but so I ask you please to stay with us. But it will be so interesting that I'm sure you won't like to leave us. The conference will continue then with Ampere analysis, which is presenting marketing trends in Europe, especially during COVID, and then we'll continue with the panel. So, Pascal, I'll let you take the floor.
Thank you, Silvia. I have to say that I am particularly happy to welcome all of you, and thanks to EUROVOD and Silvia to allow the Venice Production Bridge to have this VOD day. As you know, Venice has always welcomed and even award the projects and films coming from streaming platforms. I do believe that festivals have to have an open mind to all technological and creative changes which are happening in our industry. And so I think in those very peculiar times, we have seen the importance and the impact of SVOD and VOD platform. And my wish is really that all those platforms, and especially the European platforms, will more and more collaborate with all the different players which are part of our industry. I would say, of course, the producers, the distributor, and also the exhibitors, because I think bridges, in order to remind Venice Production Bridge are totally able to be built between everyone. So it would be very brief. So I just thank you for having decided to come here in spite of everything. We are happy because we are the first, if I can say so, a festival taking place on site and of course online, but on site and in person after the lockdowns everywhere. I have to say that up to now we will have 1,400 professionals coming on site, which is honestly half of what I am used to host, but which is, I think, a very good number, and which also shows that if we have all decided to go in this industry and this business, it's first of all to meet, to share, to network, and to see people, really. So thank you very much, and have a very good day.
Oh, I can't even remember how to turn the microphone on. It's been so long. Like most of you, I've been in my kitchen for the last 4 months, so I'm not sure we can do a panel without the sound of coffee and you know, maybe the odd cat coming through. So if you have any of these things, that would be very useful. If you want to do the Zoom experience, you can just do this, point at the wrong person, and it'll all work just fine. It's weird. It's really nice to be in 19th century Venice as well, wandering around the city with no tourists is fantastic. I keep expecting to bump into Lord Byron or E.M. Forster or something, but really grateful for Venice to be back. I mean, I think it's a really, really important moment for the industry to get us back live, albeit rather spaced out. I kind of like that. Those of us who are misanthropists don't really like the human race very much. I think this is it's got something going for us. There's no smelling problems, which is good news in this sweaty weather. So what we're talking about is the other great thing, which has, I think, in lots of ways held together the industry over the last few months, which is, ba-ba. Oh, not ba-ba. Ah.
Yeah, here.
Here we go.
Self-service.
Self-service, exactly. So in lots of ways, the lockdown was an essential and a critical moment for VOD. No one wanted this. There will be people in this room, I suspect, who've got rather tragic, including me, some rather tragic memories of the last few months. They will have seen COVID at its worst. But it was an extraordinary moment. And for us, with EUROVOD, I was asked to do a report last year, and suddenly this report took a whole new dimension, coming right in the middle of lockdown. And the critical thing with lockdown, as we'll be talking about over the next, with the panels too, is it gave people time they hadn't had before. And that time, as we will see, was used to experiment. I think it was a really, really essential thing for VOD to be seen in a different way, not as the end, as some ancillary to another market like cinema, but as something with its own dynamic. And I think I've got to give a lot of credit as part of this report to those services that you'll read about in case studies, and you'll see in the one-to-ones after here, who adapted in a quite extraordinary way for what are small businesses. And it is still an emerging sector. It hardly needs saying, but VOD now, like Zoom, it feels like it's been there forever. Actually, streaming platforms are relatively recent. You know, it's so much part of our lives now that we forget that, you know, that Netflix itself as a kind of accidental empire. You know, it was still giving us VOD through the post on a regular basis within a decade ago. So things are changing. What we had was always a set of businesses, a set of small and medium-sized businesses in the European sector, and some of them are quite small, some of them are quite specialized, but all of them, I think, have a few things in common, which is they are ambitious, I think they think internationally, and most important, they think about their audiences. So the key figures, I think, there are the 80% of that content is national or non-national European. You think that through in the climate that we now exist, and you realize that that is a really, really important fact. We cannot have European diversity, cultural diversity, just through the system that we've had in place, because you cannot access that work. You can't rely on everything for the opening weekend in a cinema and then a long, long wait for the next thing. It needs to have its own dynamic. If there's a message that comes through the report, it's that what VOD is about is not technology, it's not about platforms, it's about diverse content connecting with diverse audiences, meaning it can reach us all, and it feels like it's essential. In terms of business models, they are the worst set of acronyms, actually. VOD's got SVOD, TVOD, very ugly things. But we're basically talking about downloads and rentals and subscriptions, and then some free content. And what we've seen is a lot of experimentation with all these things. So the report looks at platforms that have a focus on subscription, some that have a focus on transaction, but most are diversified businesses that are not only working with TVOD and with SVOD, but they may also be film distributors. They might be running festivals. They could be working with music. They can be working with series. But it's a diverse set of organizations that come together to form what we now are trying to talk about as a European VOD independent sector, as something that is separate and different to the VOD that you may have in your head, which probably begins with a company beginning with N. And if you focus on audiences, diverse content, I think you begin to get a different picture. So during lockdown, so it's a slightly misleading way of put that, 78% of the services that were interviewed saw an increase in traffic. That means people going on to their site, not necessarily doing anything, but seeing it. Not a small thing. The biggest difficulty for European VOD platforms is to get the attention in a market with tons and tons of other things vying for that space. But you're talking close to 80% of people saw more people come. Important point in here that I think we'll come to, but the demographics are really critical in here. And when you read the case studies, you realize one of the things that happened was that the kind of audiences that we might associate with film festivals began to look at VOD differently. It's one of the ironies of VOD is that young people who spend their time online are the ones they're the ones that tend not to see or be interested or don't think they're interested in European traffic. The older audience who's more associated with watching lots of European content are the ones that were less likely to be using VOD. But that's changing. Those demographics are mixing up. And I think one of the exciting things that we'll come to next is that those cliches about what people will and won't watch are being thoroughly challenged. So 60% of the services saw increases in transactions. That means people actually doing things. And as we'll see, that's for some that was enormous. But that's people who are coming in and taking a subscription, or they're downloading. That's a big number. It may not feel that way when you look at but that's a big number of people who, for the first time, they may have gone to a place and realized the value that it offered and have taken advantage of the offer that is there. And the services that are interviewed and the survey that's at the heart of this report showed that the platforms, small businesses though many of them are, most of them are, they all understood what that opportunity was. They ran marketing campaigns that weren't just old-fashioned marketing campaigns. I'd urge you to think about, as we go through, about curation, editorial, the way that you get people excited about what's on that platform. These are skills that are quite native to VOD services. And I think a lot of experimentation turned what might have been marketing at the beginning of the lockdown was often very much films, for example, that would have already got been in the middle of a campaign for cinema release, and then they moved over to online release. But they still had that momentum behind them from the cinema release. As it went on, it was quite clear, and we're going to see some good examples, that the marketing was changing. It was creating its own momentum. It was creating demand, and that's a very different thing. 56% hosted or ran a festival. Festivals, I think this is one of the keys that will come out of the report, and I hope when you read it, you will understand this straight away, is if we're talking about European VOD services in terms of collaboration, a desire to be part of a European ecosystem, the festival was a fantastic example of where that cooperation, forced though it was, created a whole exciting new dynamic. And I've yet to speak to a festival that doesn't understand that this is creating new value and new opportunities. Cinemas, I think art house cinema, obviously there's some links for some of the services with art house cinemas. 70% set up a cinema partnership during this period, but that ignores to an extent the fact that a lot of them already have relationships with cinemas. They might be cinema owners, they might be part of groups with cinemas, but the idea that I think the report takes on and needs to be taken on all the time is the idea that cinema and VOD are somehow locked in some great battle for audiences. I think what comes out of the report is an understanding actually of a great deal of mutual interest, and even the possibility of a symbiotic relationship where the two can work to enhance each other's performance. So in terms of the rises themselves, the average rise in terms of traffic was 270%, which is enormous. But you have to remember some of the services that took part in the survey were new, or they were very small, and you would expect to see those exponential reaches. I think more significantly and importantly is those double-digit rises that were for established platforms like FILMIN, like FILMDOO TV, that I think really are really very important. If you can see growth on top of an already fast rising growth, you begin to start seeing another level. I think it begins to get exciting, and you realize these are new audiences that established platforms have possibly didn't even realize were there to the extent that they are. So viewing habits, we don't need to go through, but TV had a bit of a renaissance during the lockdown. But TV, obviously, the PC and the laptop are critical to where we watch films. All of you in this room, I suspect, watch one of those somehow. Tablets, any kind of mobile device, I think, is becoming increasingly important. And 5G, we're not going to talk about specifically here, may become a game changer. I always watch mine in the bath, actually. I found that one of the joys of lockdown, watching a movie on my tablet in the bath. It's just an image you might want to take home with you. In terms of the viewing habits, the key things that I take away here, there's a couple of things that clearly changed. One is when people had time, the way that the curation and the editorial worked, and there's some wonderful examples of editorial. We won't talk about it here because I think Jaume is going to come up and talk about this later, but the FILMIN Times, fantastic piece of high quality editorial that get people excited and interested and providing context for the film choices and the approach. Fantastic work, gets people excited. But the critical point for me that keeps coming out is that this message kept coming over and over again. When audiences had the time to choose, and when they didn't have all the rest of the noise coming in and all of the influences on their perception that are there day to day that narrows the view of what audiences want, people explored and they chose really interesting things. There was a rise in people watching creative documentaries, not because they necessarily thought they ever would watch a creative documentary, but the wonderful thing is if you use editorial and you use the way you organize, you use your themes properly, people don't think in terms of, oh, I'm watching art house now, or, oh, look, I'm watching creative documentary. They see fantastic, interesting content that excites them and speaks to them. And I think this is critical. If we as Europe are not able to connect European cultural diversity to European audiences, then I think we can see in the world around us, if now we're out of our kitchens and looking more broadly, I think you can see the cultural importance of that in very, very clear ways. Audiences have also shown they're willing to take more than one thing. So subscription stacking may be a term that lots of you know, some of you probably don't know. And it's the idea that, yeah, sure, I'll have Netflix, but I'm willing to have other subscriptions. It's an emerging market. All of the findings of this report have to come with that proviso that we can never be 100% sure about where things are going to go. But it seems very clear that Netflix is not going to meet all of your needs. If it is going to meet all of your needs, then I'm very sorry for you. But there are other things that are out there, and this is great. This is other opportunities. And that picture there is just one that we'll talk about later with Jaume, but My Mexican Brits was a great example of a film that was shown on an online festival, the Barcelona festival that was on FILMIN, and ended up becoming a huge success. So again, people are willing to try, and you have the numbers, but we're still learning as we go along. But it feels to me like lots of clues came out in this report. Yeah, I am going to. So all you need to know here is the barriers that stopped some of the stuff moving forward. You know all this. It was difficult, I think, to get the films. We know that. We know that some of that content was held back. And I think that what comes out of all those barriers, the general barriers and general influences, is there's a debate to be had. There's a discussion to be had across the whole industry. If you're going to collaborate and cooperate and think about the future, then I think we need to think seriously about how we address some of these issues. So we've got some sector priorities, which is, I think, the key here. I think when you read this, and I urge you to read this report, there's lots of things that the VOD sector is taking as a responsibility, not just an opportunity. They're taking it as a responsibility to deal with. You need to become bigger. If you're going to have a European VOD independent sector, it needs to grow. There need to be more audiences, there need to be more opportunities. People need to take this seriously as an industry. You cannot have a world in which you are seen as little Netflixes or as a consolation prize for cinematic release. It's got to be more than that. And I think the notion of diverse, dynamic, and sustainable suggests that VOD has got this in mind. It has these ideas about building on what's been learned. I'll only point a couple of these things out to you. The notion of a knowledge economy is critical. It's really important that we understand that if we are about audiences and connection, we need to know those audiences better. We need to be able to join those up. That seems to me the argument, and the biggest argument for investment in this sector, is that this is where experimentation needs to take place. This is where the tools need to be placed. And I think it's a difficult argument at a time when when people are thinking about short term in production and in distribution. They're worried about their existence as businesses. But we have to think long term, and we have to think about how we can invest in a sector which I think has shown evidence, and this report carries it, of how it can make those big jumps forward. And incentives can work in all kinds of ways. the high price of MGs that are quite unrealistic for lots of platforms, that might be an area where there is room for public intervention. But the argument that I think comes out this, that I think are made very eloquently by the people in the case studies and in the survey, is you need to invest in us if you believe what you say about cultural diversity, about inclusion, about participation, and about the future of an industry that connects across all the demographics and all the countries. So I'll just leave you with this final thought. I hate this thing, new normal. What the hell? Anyone says new normal, you should immediately give them a punch in the head. It's because we don't know what new normal is. If people who say new normal are normally sitting in their Zoom box, and if new normal is Zoom, I'm going to throw myself in the Lido right now because I've had enough. You know, it's too much already. It's the very worst thing that was ever invented. Just maybe the nuclear bomb, but it's getting there. It's getting there. So I just want to leave you with this thought. What makes it so critical, this report, which is why it was such an interesting piece of timing, was nothing new was really created during this period. No one had time to strategically think about what are we going to do if we have a pandemic as an industry. We didn't think about that. There was nothing put in place. What lockdown did is it exposed, accentuated, and really accelerated things that already existed. That's what makes it significant. The growth was already there in the sector. The businesses were in place and sharp enough that they could fit in and adapt to these new realities of COVID. But the fact they already existed is what's relevant. What matters now is that this rise that we've had, this dramatic rise, that's allowed a lot of those trends to suddenly start becoming much more real. And lots of people elsewhere in the industry, lots of cinemas I've been speaking to here, have been saying to me, look, we've been working with VOD and we've seen numbers, we've seen big numbers. It's been exciting, it's been good. There is cooperation and collaboration that can be there, but it needs imagination and it needs the right kind of way of looking at investment. So just the very last thing here is really, we're talking about an independent sector which is integrated with the existing broadcast and film worlds, and at the same time is dynamic enough to invent new things. It's integrated into the discussion, which at heart, keep going back to, diverse audience, diverse content. How do we bring those together? How do we make them relevant and important? This is the discussion that's going on, I think, that makes this so important. And there are areas where the VOD platforms, the independent platforms, will work with Netflix and Amazon and Disney and all these people. There are areas of common interest, of course, but it's got its own position, not Netflix. It's non-Netflix, not anti-Netflix. It's not sitting here saying, you've got to get rid of something. It's saying, work with us, work together. There is the possibility of building something new and exciting. And that, I think, is the conclusion that comes out of the report. That's the report.
And you can download the report. This amazing piece of work, a long report actually, with a lot of details. And there was, really a great opportunities for EUROVOD to know also the sectors, because what we are doing in EUROVOD is to foster a cooperative management within the sector, but also to know what is the sector about. There is not much about it. So thank you for giving us all this information. We are going to pass on the floor to Agustina that will present EUROVOD Pro, eurovodpro.org, where from today you can also download the report actually. So thank you, Agustina.
Thank you. It was really interesting to hear Michael's thoughts, because I was watching you and I was watching this almost full room, and I was saying new normal. Film festival and VOD platforms are on site and they are online actually, so what the fuck? So I was like, people who work online are actually on site on this new normality whole thing. So this is really interesting, as we are like aiming as a sector to collaborate, to build other partnerships. I mean, it's just what Michael was saying. I come from a country that is in Latin America. I'm from Argentina, and we're always struggling, and we really are, to have this kind of integration between all the sectors who are aiming to exhibit content. So I think this is the best example of having this kind of collaboration between sectors. So I'm going to rush because I think there are lots of people here who have interesting things to say as well. So we're introducing today, I generally walk and speak, but I would sit down today. But first of all, we'd like to thank, on behalf of EUROVOD, we would like to thank European Media Program, the Creative European Program, who has really supported and co-financed this kind of nice hub that we are going to show you now. This is a new experience. I think you all should join. It's, as we are claiming, the biggest online networking and marketplace for VOD professionals. We are just presenting our, this is not me, just for you to know, because some people, when I wear glasses, they say, you're looking there in the platform. No, it's not me. As today I'm not wearing glasses. This is a really nice project Silvia started and really imagined it with all the board members at EUROVOD. It's a place where you can find partners, you can have a look at reports like the one Michael has already introduced. I'm going to show you how. You can really find what's going on about VOD sector, what is going on e-learning training courses we will have. We will show now the features. I think perhaps you'll think we are doing someone else's job, because perhaps you know some other platforms, industrial B2B platforms, and you say perhaps EUROVOD is coming here to replace others. No, actually, our partners are now online watching this nice streaming conference, and there are lots of partners of EUROVOD Pro, our new professional platform, who are other B2B platforms that want to know what's happening in the VOD world. So this is a new tool. This is powered by EUROVOD, as I already told you. And why? Because what I wrote there, because we really need a place where we could benchmark, we could collaborate, where we could just find each other, but not just entering a database, you know? This is not just a database. You will find, yes, of course, you'll find information, contacts, you will find other companies to interact, or just independent professionals who want to apply for a job, or you want to perhaps search for talents in VOD world. And perhaps you have other platforms that, of course, they suit your needs. They are there to have like a showcase on the film industry, but perhaps we are like lacking of a place to really meet each other, as here we are doing it, and we are doing it online. So we've been working in this kind of really, some pages you will access during these days, but I'll show you some kind of prototype, because this is like a secret project. So I'll show you some specs. I don't know if this is working. Yes, the guys have lost me. Bueno, this is kind of some of the navigation. The video is not working so well in the PPT, but don't worry, the platform will do, so we'll skip the video thing. These are the features. You will find, as I told you, the database, search engine, that of course fits all the categories that we think VOD world needs. For instance, there we go, distribution, VOD platforms, exhibitors, some marketplaces, VOD consultants, VOD products and services, media, broadcasting companies. I'm sorry for the PPT, but it's like doing this way. You will have a place to market. This won't be a market of our own. It will be a market to integrate other markets and try to really integrate VOD world in their databases, because we think we really need to collaborate with the others. Then you'll have these reports like the one Michael has done. This one you will have the opportunity to download it. You will have trainings and events. We are working on e-learning tools. They will be fantastic, and they will be showcased, I think, by the end of this year. Silvia? Yes?
Well, yeah. Actually, there are several features. What you are going to see now is just a welcoming page. You're going to tell it afterwards, but there will be the beta version that will be launched in October, and then we are integrating features and integration with other databases also. So the final version, thanks Creative Europe Media Program, will be developed also during next year.
So you get to have access to trainings and events online, and of course the information about those on site. You will be able to showcase them. You will be able to have access to different job offers or services for independent professionals, who perhaps freelancers who you want to chase, or tech providers, or perhaps you want to check other stuff on services you demand. You'll be able to update news or blog and direct message with people. You'll say, okay, this is a database? No, as I told you, because this is a collaborative tool. As we have already worked the past days in the European VOD meetings, I'm seeing some of the trainees here, the word that came up for the sector is to collaborate, to network, and to share information. We are lacking of audience information, for instance. We are not having the possibility to benchmark with others. Well, this you have the possibility. I hope this PowerPoint is going to help me, because, bueno. So you can be a company, you can be an independent professional, you can be related to the audiovisual sector, or you can be directly from the audiovisual sector. You will have content, tech opportunities, best practices shared there, the possibility to have partnerships, and of course the studies and market analysis. These are goals. These are goals you will find. These are things that we will keep improving with your feedback and with our work, and thanks to Europa Creative Media. Yes, that's right. But these are the main goals there. So I would like to see if this is helping me. Okay, with one of our members, we did some kind of filling the stuff of the whole platform, how you could be able to showcase what you do, to have tags, your business model. You could upload a reel, you could upload presentations, you could do anything, and you will have your subsidiary companies showcased as well. You could have the database and the search made by filters. You could easily find these other people you're looking for. These are the way you can show your contacts. These are the way you can show your news and latest releases. Oh my God. These are the offers, the job offers you can put on. These are the reports you can have. Thanks, FILMIN, for all the information you gave us. And so I'm encouraging you, because Guy is having another presentation and he will kill me. I'm encouraging you to register now at eurovodpro.org. You will benefit from this exclusive promo of early bird subscribers to support this tool that will be very much improved by the end of the year, with all these e-learning courses and both the best practices being shared. So you'll unlock the beta version. We'll be back. That it will be launched by October the 12th. You could download the best report on VOD in the entire world. You could access to EUROVOD members and partners that are actually on streaming right now. You could have access to their business cards and everything. You can contact them, and you have exclusive downloads of everything we have done in the European VOD meetings. So contact me or Silvia here. Thank you really to all our partners that are there. Sorry for the video, it really worked, but you know, as we are live, things happen. But I swear that you will find some static pages right now in order to access to these contacts and the VOD report and whatever. And on the 12th of October, you'll be able to showcase your company and start networking and being updated and trained on the VOD sector. So, welcome to EUROVOD Pro.
Thank you.
Okay, we're going to hand over to Guy now. Where's Guy? And we'll... there you are.
Actually, Guy Bisson or
I don't know why
Guy.
I'm calling you Guy. It's it's because I'm not out of the country. I'm not allowed out, so Guy.
I'm doing that, sorry. You want to be here or there?
Yes, good.
Okay.
Or I can go there.
It's okay, it's the same for us.
Okay. I'll stand here then. Okay. Thank you, and good morning, everyone. I'm very pleased to be here. Can I, first of all, applaud the Venice Film Festival for pushing ahead with a physical event. This is, after all, a very international business, and the sooner we can get back to that business,
Sorry, you're going to need to use the mic.
the better. I'll stand here.
Because we are streaming. Sorry, we're streaming, so people there.
So the sooner we can get back to that business, the better. And also, of course, thank you to Silvia and the EUROVOD team for inviting me today to talk about VOD trends in Europe. So, who are we? I am one of the founders of Ampere Analysis. We're a London-based international analyst firm specialised in the TV and content business, and we work with clients like the ones you see on screen. I always forget to say this, so that's why I put in a little slide as a reminder to myself. If you would like a copy of the slides, please just email me. I am more than happy to share. Thank you. But you have to wait to the end and pay attention to the last slide to get my email address. So there we go. We cannot talk about trends this year without, of course, talking about COVID. We're all sick of it, but it has had a significant impact on the industry. For VOD and for streaming, that impact has been positive. So looking at TV viewing platforms, the ones that gained more viewers, this is not viewing time, but viewers, were streaming platforms and catch-up TV, so also streamed platforms, had a positive impact of the lockdown. Slight downside, consumers believe that after we're through this, after we're all out of lockdown and able to behave completely normally, there'll be a bit of a backlash and they won't watch as much and they might ditch some of those subscriptions. But overall, it's been extremely positive for the industry in terms of money. So this is a little piece of analysis I did where I looked at our forecasts just before lockdown, and then a couple of months into lockdown, when we'd made all the adjustments, seen what was going on, what was the difference in the 5-year outlook. And what this basically shows is that streaming is the only major gain, about 50 billion in additional revenue over 5 years. Compare that to the theatrical business, which is down 25 billion over the coming 5 years, most of that this year. So SVOD gaining in customers, gaining in viewers, gaining in money, and that is a positive. What else is going on out there? Well, first of all, I assume I don't need to tell anyone this, but it is getting crowded out there. But it's getting crowded in a very interesting way, and this is important to a lot of what I'm going to be talking about. It's getting crowded with studios, the content creators and producers, going direct to the end customer. And that is key to the market dynamics that we're going to see in the coming few years. What does that mean? Well, it means that it's not all about Netflix anymore. This is just 5 years ago. Netflix was effectively half of the streaming market. It is no more. The other thing to notice on this is that the independents, the others, have got smaller, but that's because it's the very large platforms that are pushing the very rapid growth. And the third takeaway from this is look at the size of the 3 Chinese platforms. So China, an absolutely huge streaming market when you take into account, even in comparison to Netflix and Amazon. So 3 takeaways from this slide. And of course, we have not new competition, but in terms of streaming and on-demand and non-linear, it is new. The broadcasters evolving their broadcaster VOD strategies to encompass SVOD. So all of these are broadcaster-led, paid SVOD platforms, which are again increasing the competitive dynamics out there. This is probably a surprise to most of you. So we talk about SVOD a lot. It makes a lot of noise in the press. Everyone is obsessed with SVOD. And you probably think that it's the dominant platform in most markets. Well, this compares streaming to the traditional pay TV platforms, cable, satellite, IP, terrestrial. But it takes out the overlap, so homes with multiple SVOD services, and counts households, not subscriptions. And what it shows is that very few markets have more streaming homes than traditional pay TV. Now, of course, there are a number of markets that are getting there. This line is 1, a ratio of 1. When it passes 1, there are more SVOD than traditional pay TV. So the Scandinavian markets, the UK are there already, a number of the other Western markets fast approaching, but I'm sure it does surprise you that we're not there yet in a lot of the big developed markets. And that's why onboarding, to use a phrase, a slightly ugly phrase, is still important. Onboarding meaning doing deals with traditional pay TV platforms. And Netflix, very quietly, has gone out and done well over 100 of these deals, and as a result is now available on a traditional platform to half of the pay TV homes in the entire world. So a very important part of the Netflix strategy, not talked about much, but very key still, to think about not a them and us or a streaming and cable satellite, but actually it's an evolution of the way people consume TV, and we need to embrace and think about all forms still of reaching that end audience, because it can have a significant impact on your reach and your potential reach. So where is the inflection point? Well, our forecast suggests that by 2024, Western Europe will hit an SVOD to pay TV ratio of 1. That is the exact same number of SVOD homes as there are pay TV, and after that, of course, it will pass. So 2024 is the year of inflection when SVOD becomes, or streaming becomes, the dominant means of subscribing subscription TV in Western Europe. A key year. Of course, the other thing that is going on out there, and Michael talked about it a bit, is stacking. Europe is fast approaching the US in terms of the number of services people are taking. So the US knocking on the door of 4 SVOD services per SVOD home, Europe knocking around 2.5 to 3. So we're getting there. Stacking is increasing. And the big question that's been on everyone's lips, how many services will people take? Well, one way to look at that is to analyze what people are willing to spend on subscription TV today. And this is the spend, the annual spend in each of the markets that you see on the slide there on pay TV, subscription TV overall. So let's take that as our baseline and say what happens if we transition that spend to streaming instead of traditional platforms. And what it means is that the capacity in the market in the US is up to 8. In Europe is 3 to 4 at the moment in terms of replacing that spend with streaming spend instead of traditional. Now, we believe not all of that is available without sport, because sport is a key driver of those traditional platforms. And unless Amazon goes out and buys more of the Premier League or some of the other rights, that's not going to be captured. But nonetheless, it gives you an idea of where that stack ceiling might be. So around or up to 8 services, at least in the case of the US. Okay, so this is a slightly failed slide. Behind this is the really interesting graph, which I'm afraid you can't see. And this was supposed to layer on top of it, but let me describe that really interesting graph. So one of the things we look at is audience demographics. And what we can see is that the broadcasters, the traditional linear channels, their audience is diverging very, very significantly. What it is doing is getting very, very old, and all the young people are deserting that platform. Okay. Take then the broadcaster streaming services. What is happening there? They are converging to average. So they are capturing that older audience, but they're also capturing more of the young and middle-aged audience. And the interesting thing is, if you look at Netflix and Amazon and the big streaming platforms, they are going the same way. So they're no longer about the young, highly connected, educated, relatively wealthy audience that they were 5 years ago. They are becoming the generalist channels in the market. And that is very significant in terms of competitive dynamics, but also in terms of the content market and what is getting produced, which I'm going to talk about, and acquired, indeed, which I'm going to talk about in some coming slides. So platform positioning, because if you're out there with a service, launching a new service, what you're trying to do, of course, is find space in an increasingly crowded market. And I'm going to talk a lot about white space, so I was very pleased when Peacock announced their plans, NBC Universal's platform, that Matt Strauss talked about having discovered the white space in the market, because that is very much the way I was also thinking about the market. What does he mean by white space? Of course, where is the gap? Where is the opportunity in this increasingly crowded streaming market for new players to make their mark? So, again, animation has disappeared off this, making it slightly less exciting. But what does it show? Well, looking for white space. In the UK, most of the streaming platforms are analogues of channels. They're either broadcaster streaming services or they're new streaming channels like Hopster, a kids service. There are social media players who are the new niche channels, so Facebook, YouTube, go after a very narrow audience demographic with their content business and plays. There are beginnings of aggregation from Amazon, and there are new aggregators like Apple trying to crack that aggregation challenge. And then we have Netflix and Amazon Prime, who are fundamentally fulfilling the premium channel space. And the new entrants who are looking at dynamic business models, mixed hybrid models, combining SVOD with AVOD, and trying to change the market in that way. And Peacock would fall into that space. So thinking about the content out there, there are broadly 4 approaches. There's the Asian approach, and you can see there that the Asian platforms all have absolutely massive catalogues. So piling it high as you can, is key in Asia. Then we move to the next category or cohort of services, where you'll find Netflix and Amazon. Also very large catalogues, wide breadth. The next size category down is the large regionals, particularly the US regionals, and the BVOD catalogues of major broadcasters. And then the space that most of the EUROVOD members will be playing in is the smaller independent space, where the catalogue size average is around 4,000 hours. So that is the sort of breadth that we're talking about within this dynamic space. How else can we look for white space? Well, this is looking at the percent of the catalogue that is movies, up the side, up the y-axis, and the age along the x-axis. And you can see there's an incredibly crowded space of almost new TV, basically. That's a lot of TV, or 30 to 40% TV. 30 to 40% movies, so 60% TV. And it's about average 2015, 2016 in age. But there's a huge amount of white space with largely movie or majority movie catalogues, and especially majority new movie catalogues. So there's one area of white space that is interesting to look at. You probably don't want to be competing in that hugely crowded area, which, by the way, is where Netflix is, where Amazon is, where the studios are as well. But as you begin to scale, there's a problem, or I guess it's a double-edged sword of scale. The more content you have, the lower the average quality. It kind of makes sense. The more you're sticking in there, on average, the quality is going to drop. So another way to think about competing is by careful curation of catalogue. So again, another way of thinking about white space in that market. And this just shows the importance of curation, because in terms of the scale, the really big successful platforms have a high proportion of the top-rated movies. Now, of course, it's chicken and egg. Their scale allows them to buy the top-rated movies, but again, it's another way of thinking about curation when you're playing in the more smaller independent space and looking for that white space. High quality drives subscription, and we can see it in the correlation between uptake and quality within the catalogue. The quality, by the way, is an Ampere critical rating that we have developed to benchmark quality of every title on a scale of 0 to 100. Within specifically the European movie space, it's a little more difficult because the quality is quite aggregated together. There's not much differentiation in the catalogues that have a large amount of European movie content. But where the potential white space there lies is in scale. So there aren't that many with very, very large European content catalogues. And this just shows that who is driving European movie content within the streaming space. Well, it's the large local and specialised players like Curzon Home Cinema, BFI, etc., who have the very large amounts of European movie content. But the specialists who have 100% movie catalogue. So remember earlier on I was talking about that white space potential for movie catalogues within this very crowded streaming market. You can see that FILMDOO and MUBI and some of the specialist movie catalogues are beginning to address that opportunity and that space. And European movie content is another opportunity and niche to address. Another important thing to understand about audience, and we look very closely through our consumer surveys at audience dynamics and demographics, is that the fans of European content are not the generalist audience. Now, they may evolve in just the same way as Netflix has, but at the moment, people who say they watch a lot of European movies and a lot of European TV series are skewing very young. In a way, it's like the Netflix audience of 5 or 10 years ago. We saw the same thing. That's become more generalist now, but they're skewing very young, and they skew to a household situation where they live with other young adults, or perhaps they're a young couple with kids. So that is the dynamics at the moment of the audience that really, really loves European movie content and European TV series. But the majors are increasingly getting into that space as well. So we can see that the catalogues of the big SVOD players, Netflix included, are skewing increasingly to non-US content. It is a very, very important competitive driver out there for everybody, for all of the players, including for Netflix's original production, more than half of which now is non-US produced. And so we're seeing three dynamics in terms of approaches to market. We have effectively the studio-led platforms, whose are 100% almost own content, Disney Plus, etc., using the platform to distribute Disney content to the end user. We have the regional, also often studio-led, the HBOs and the Showtimes, who are heading to the middle, sort of half and half, acquired content and original production, and Netflix rapidly heading to that point as well, of 50-50 acquired produced. And then we have the local players on the bottom who are largely still acquiring their streaming catalogues. That's important for the way the production market is influenced and also the acquisition market, because streaming players are increasingly important in commissioning original content. So if you are a producer, you're increasingly looking to streaming players. Up to 25–30% of all commissioning activity now in given markets is coming from streaming players. Now that includes originals for the broadcaster-led services as well as the Netflixes, Amazons and Disney Pluses of this world. And you can see that the big commissioners, of course, are still the streaming players, but linear broadcasters are increasingly important commissioners of streaming content, because the way their own services are evolving means that they need to push original content onto those streaming platforms in order to capture the audience that I talked about that was drifting away, that younger audience that was otherwise drifting away from their linear channels. So a lot of competitive dynamics out there, not just about VOD, but also about the whole linear space that is impacting the VOD and streaming market and what is getting commissioned and made. Here's another little fact about internationalization in commissioning. Just look at Netflix. I said over half of their content being made outside the US. Amazon also getting there. Those two platforms within the VOD space are driving that internationalization of commissioning. And that has fundamentally changed the European production market for the better and for the positive. Lots of money flowing into that industry. Another way to look at the market is to think about how now these streaming platforms, the majors, compare to the linear platform space. Look at the graph on the right. What it shows is the number of scripted TV shows on all of the whole UK linear space, so all the channels in the UK in a year, and on Amazon and Netflix. And Amazon and Netflix are not far off the entire TV channel landscape in the UK in terms of their scripted new shows coming on platform. But the next slide shows you that their refresh rate is far lower. And this is partly due to the way the rights deals are done. Linear broadcasters take the rights, but they take them for a limited period. Netflix is generally taking in perpetuity. So those seasons are sitting there. So from an audience perception perspective, the Netflix catalogue and the Amazon catalogue is hugely broad. But actually, it's the broadcasters who are still turning over a lot more fresh, scripted content. And that's a really interesting dynamic, because when you think about positioning, the audience perception of your catalogue is absolutely key. And taking rights in perpetuity, or at least for long-term usage, can have a really positive impact on that perception. The flip side of that, if you are a producer, and taking the money from Netflix or from Amazon, is that they are far more likely to not renew for a second season. So again, comparing the linear channel space in its entirety to Netflix, half of all the linear series in a given year are renewals, a second or third season. Only about a third of the streaming content seasons are renewals. So far less likely to get a second season with Netflix. And the churn rate for Netflix is around 18%. So that's the number of series that gets cancelled as a proportion of the number of new ones they commission. Churn rate used a lot in pay TV for customer turnover, but this trying to apply it to series cancellation, so around 20% within the streaming space. Few last slides just to talk also about the difference in the acquisition strategies of the linear space and the streaming space, because the way the two platforms are evolving is a little bit different, and it does impact that competitive dynamics. So the linear channel is still very reliant on things like crime procedurals, courtroom dramas. They're very reliant on costume drama and period historical epic drama. whereas the streaming platforms have very specific niches, fantasy and sci-fi in particular. Sort of, I guess, cross-border international drama is another driver of their acquisition strategy. So the type of content that they're looking to buy is very, very different from the type of content that the linear broadcasters are out there acquiring. This, by the way, based on the top 15 most widely distributed shows that we picked up on the SVOD space and the linear space. And just a couple of last slides. Adaptation has been a key driver of new drama on SVOD and on linear, but we picked up over the last few quarters that that is now in decline, a sign perhaps that originality is returning to the creative space within drama. But there was a big spike for the streamers under COVID, so they went back to sources of non-original material for their drama commissioning and creative process during the period of lockdown. And the final slide to leave you with, also a positive, because I think although the dynamics out there are changing, there's a lot of positives in the market, is that with the direct consumer platforms, there's a big change in the supply of content. So the studios are beginning to hold back from licensing. That content that has been their business for 100 years, stick it through the cinema, then stick it out to international distribution, is changing very rapidly. Just looking at the big 5 studios, over 2,000 hours of their content has disappeared from Netflix in the last few quarters. And that, of course, affects everyone. But the positive is that the independents are the ones who need to fill that space. The independent producers not tied to a major studio are going to see the value and interest in their content, and that includes movies, independent movies, increase, because someone has to fill that hole as the studios pull their content very rapidly off Netflix, Amazon, and the other third-party platforms that are not part of their own family. So lots of positives in the dynamics that are happening out there for the independent sector in particular. And I thought that was a nice positive message with which to leave you with this summary of EUROVOD trends. That is my email, as I said. Please send me a message if you'd like the slides. Follow me on Twitter and come and grab me afterwards if you'd like to chat through any of those trends in more detail. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Guy. If you can wait there a moment, do I have any questions? It's difficult to tell when you're so spaced out. I mean, not spaced out, I mean, physically. Okay, let me just ask you, well, I mean, I think the white space argument's a very interesting one. It's an argument, I think, that comes out of the report too, is that there is the more that the VOD platforms like Netflix seem to be getting stronger, the more the white space is actually open as kind of counter-programming, and that seems to be a big part of the opportunities for European independent platforms, is to be different. It's to be, as I say, not Netflix, not anti-Netflix. And do you see that the growth creating more white space around it? Do you see that as a trend?
Absolutely, and if you remember back to some of those bubble slides, the spaces that were really crowded were the spaces where Netflix, Amazon, the big studios were. Slightly more generalist, a sort of mix of TV series and movies skewed towards TV, sort of 3 to 4 years old on average. That's the really crowded space. The opportunity is in the other big niches or niches of scale. And I think, you know, European is one, movies is another, quality movies we're seeing, and you talked about changes to the way theatrical has worked under lockdown. Some of that will continue with the premium VOD windows opening up and the opportunity to utilize that window as well, which, you know, really The studios were not behind that before lockdown. Disney said in its first results in lockdown that they were still massive supporters of the theatrical window, and then they stuck Milan on Disney+. So change is happening. Change for the independents is opportunity, because it's the studio business that is changing so very rapidly. The studio business that is not stopping licensing their content, pulling it back to their own platforms, and that creates lots and lots of opportunity for the others who need to fill those spaces.
So the ironic thing is, as the domination grows, the opportunities around it grows too.
Yeah.
Just, do you see any, when you look at those big dominant players fighting it out, do you see any signs that that's going to consolidate, that you're going to end up with what looks at the moment like quite a healthy amount of competition, takeovers, mergers and so on, narrowing that big market, that majors market down?
It's a really important question. There are two ways to consolidate, and one is technical. I think the really big challenge, and I didn't talk about it, it's a presentation all on its own, is aggregation and discovery. And that's something that nobody has solved yet. And we all know how long it takes. Unless you know what you want to watch on Netflix, you're probably spending 15, 20 minutes finding something. And when you've got 6 different platforms and 6 different interfaces, that is a very different entertainment experience from the very simple one we're used to with television. And so consolidation through aggregation, rather than through necessarily mergers and acquisitions, I think, is definitely the next big trend to watch. In terms of merger and acquisition, within the smaller independent space, potentially, I think probably within the studio space, Netflix, Amazon space, we won't be seeing much of that for the foreseeable future.
Okay. I have some questions. I've just got a kind of final one, which maybe you don't have an answer to. It seems to me that in the discussions we've been having and in the interviews for the report, when we get into the kind of interesting philosophical element of this, it seems the world is dividing quite rapidly into services that give you what you want or what you think you want. It narrows it down. It's politically, you see that with, if you watch one Fox News, you can be guaranteed you're going to get 1,000 Donald Trump things. So there's the stuff you know you want, but it seems to me European culture requires the idea that there's a strong movement of giving people what they don't know they want. And that feels to me like where the European space is so essential and particularly important. I wonder if you have any observations on that front.
Yeah, I think it's another really key point, and it's one whenever I meet one of the tech providers that I always talk about with them. And Netflix, of course, has just introduced their random button to help with discovering what you don't know you want. Again, curation is one way to help with that. If you've committed to a service and it curates stuff that you don't know you want, then that's another potential niche of scale and potential white space, because absolutely at the moment with algorithms, one of the issues with the way that we're beginning to watch TV versus the old linear way is that discovery of happenstance, of something that we never knew we wanted, is disappearing. So I do think that's another opportunity, and there may be a technical solution to that as well.
Yeah, I think that white space isn't just occupied by business, it's occupied by psychology and philosophy and the way that we're all kind of working, and of course the chance of disruptive technologies coming in with a brand new set of ideas too.
Yes, yeah, well we had high hopes for Apple that they were going to solve a lot of those issues. We will see. I
think if COVID keeps going on, I'm going to take all of mine in pill form. That's the next big thing. Every morning you'll take your entertainment pill and then you'll go back to your kitchen for Zoom. It's just a thought I had. Guy, any other questions? Excellent. Guy, you've earned your corn there.
Thank you very
much. Thanks very much.
Thank you, everyone.
Before passing on the floor to the panel, I would just like to say that if you would like to book a one-to-one meeting with Guy, afterwards, you can still do it on the website of the Venice Production Bridge, VOD Market Day. And the same is for EUROVOD and EUROVOD Pro.
And if you want to buy me a grappa, I am Mikhail or Michael. Okay, can we bring the panel up? You need to run up here. Excellent. So while we're taking their seats, it was a very useful, I mean, guys, a very useful idea. I must admit I hadn't used that term before, but I will forevermore. But the idea of white space, I think, is a really important one. And I think what we're going to hear from in this next session is exactly what we were talking about at the end there. It's how the notion of demand creation, how we can create demand for the things we're doing using the dynamics of VOD is really important. And I think what we're going to hear from all of the people here is how much that you're engaging. It's not just about an online world, it's about all different forms of engagement with the experience economy, the digital economy, the knowledge economy. We're creating potentially something quite big within those white spaces we heard earlier on. What we have, I think, is for people who I think are in innovative areas. I think they are people who, during lockdown, came up with some pretty interesting experiences to share with you. All of them, as well, have been through the full journey, I think, of this developing sector too. You know, they will recognise that element of the volume business going into the content, the specialists, the audience understanding. They understand how technology fits in, but what unites them all, as I keep coming back to, is the sense that they are getting closer and more understanding of what is a changing audience. So we have Jaume Ripoll of FILMIN, we have Weerada from FILMDOO, we have Gianluca of MYMOVIES, and we have Katharina of IMZ. They're going to explain first a little bit about themselves. We'll probably ask a couple of questions then, and then we'll have a more general discussion afterwards. So if we can start with you, Jaume.
Hello. Good morning, everyone. No tie, no mask. I'm free, finally. So let me show you. So I don't know if anybody don't know about FILMIN. So FILMIN is a subscription and transactional VOD platform. It was released like one century ago in Spain and Portugal, and now we have more than 20,000 hours of content. Which is a huge catalog, so it's important to curate that content and to help the subscriber to discover, to find out which kind of film or series would finally watch by the end of the day or the beginning of the day before the bath. Let me show you some developments that we have done during the last the lockdown period, so from March till June. In FILMIN, we have done two different things, quite ambitious during those months. One is a redesign of the website, and by website I mean a website and a smart TV app, and later on will be releases iOS and Android tablet and mobile apps. And basically, we have followed three basic rules. The Higgs law, you know, it's basically predicts the time that it takes to make a decision, increases with number of complexity of choices. So less is more, basically. This is Higgs law. Second law is Miller's law. Basically, it's organize content into smaller chunks to help user process, understand and memorize easily. Usually, when you develop a platform, you used to create like thousands of options that you figure that it will help the user to find a movie, and it's wrong. It's a wrong approach. And the third is Jacob's law. Basically, if someone has success doing something, maybe you can copy or use it as a reference. No? So don't try to innovate in different ways. So this is the new design that FILMIN launched in March 2020, late March 2020. It's basically it's a way to show the content, collections, channels, festivals, kit section. It's not new, but it has been a huge success in our case. 75% more views during since March until now. And this is quite different that you show Michael or Michael on your earlier presentation. in our case, smart TV is the king. So by smart TV I mean so Samsung, LG, Sony, Panasonic, Philips, and even Vodafone, because FILMIN is available at Vodafone service in Spain and will be in Portugal as well, hopefully. 45% of content are watched through the smart TV apps, which is a huge number, and 31% only on web. And this is even during the lockdown. I imagine that maybe on after lockdown, so during summer, mobile and tablet will rise the numbers, but no, it's 24%, stick on 24%. And on a completely different side, on approach, we developed this Film in Times, you mentioned before. It's a new platform designed to discover films through the history of Europe, spanning the last one century and a half. And Film in Times it looks like a newspaper, and let me show you maybe a video, a small presentation. It is, I don't know, yeah, it's working? Oh, perfect. It's, as you see, it's so attractive, it's in black.
We're going from 2000 BC.
No, it's the feeling of Europe right now. So it's like black and blue. No?
No.
Okay, it's loading. Because we haven't.
You've got to accept the cookies.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm in Venice. But, so basically, okay. Film in Times nowadays offers 600 films. It's included in the films subscription. It's only in Spain. It will be available in the rest of Europe by next year. And then you can search not by directors or actors, but by characters. And by characters I mean Hitler, Goebbels, Churchill, Simone de Beauvoir, Albert Camus, or even Kierkegaard. So maybe we have biographies of Kierkegaard or Joan Miró. Then you can search by characters, not by directors. Secondly, you can take a look through the big, no? Maybe? Okay. So, okay, it looks like a newspaper, basically. And then you have here big events, like the fall of communism, characters, Joan Miró, for instance, and even you have a country, and then in the country you can select the country, for instance, Germany, and then in Germany you will have like 200 films that basically explain the history of German and German films. So basically, Film in Times was released in March with a great success. It's been developed by Turmix with the help of Creative Europe, as usual, and it's quite useful for us for attracting new subscribers and for educational purposes. Now it will be used in schools in Spain because it's quite useful for teaching history through European cinema. The third key aspect of those last months are the collaboration with film festivals. We have our own film festival, which is called Atlantida Film Fest. It's a hybrid festival. Basically, it takes place in Mallorca, also at FILMIN. But besides our own film festival, we have collaborated with 20 film festivals, and we will collaborate until the end of the year with 30 more. So 50 festivals during nine months. It's quite crazy. The festivals usually will take place during 10 days in the platform. They are mostly available on subscription, also on VOD, some special releases. And those are some of the films, or the festivals there. Fire, which is an LGBT festival, and Atlantida. And those are some figures. In our festival, more than 500,000 viewers during 1 month. 250,000 Day Film Festival, more than 100,000 Docs Barcelona, which are huge, huge numbers. And in terms of revenues, there are also huge revenues for those right holders and even the festivals that accepted to take part to our platform. And finally, I would like to share you some marketing campaigns we have done during the pre-lockdown, lockdown, and after lockdown. After lockdown, we developed some outdoor campaigns, huge investment, more than 50,000 euros investment for sure, on outdoor. And during the lockdown, Google Ads, Facebook, and by Facebook I mean Instagram mainly, and a website on the media and journalists. This year we will invest more than half a million euros on marketing, and it's a huge number for a VOD platform, a Spanish VOD platform, independent VOD platform. So this is FILMIN. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll ask the questions when we've had all of your presentations, but just quickly, during lockdown, just give us a sense of your increases in terms of visits and subscribers.
In terms of views, it's more than 75%. Yeah. Now, during Atlantida, we just doubled the views from last year, so from summer 2019. In terms of subscribers, I would say that more than 15% more subscribers, and we are a consolidated platform. We are not a new platform. We've been in the business since the last 10 years, so it's not the same that you are new, but 15% is quite a good number.
Yeah, impressive. Let's move to Weerada at FILMDOO. Do you want to do your presentation? And then we'll bring a lot of these themes together in a discussion afterwards.
Hello, I'm Weerada. I'm the CEO and co-founder of FILMDOO. I'm going to talk today about a little different approach to our journey, but also how COVID has actually influenced and is now redirected our company. So it's a little bit of a story. So we launched in 2015, and our original vision is simply a movie streaming platform that helps people to discover and watch great films from around the world. So if you come to FILMDOO, that's what you will see. Our slogan is "Get connected to the world through film." And I'm very proud to see that we were mentioned in Guy's report earlier, because we do have one of the world's biggest international film catalog. We have a very strong European catalog, French, Italian, Spanish, but of course also other languages like Asian languages, Japanese, Chinese, etc. So essentially when we started out, this is actually the area that we were looking to help with. And 50,000 films get made around the world every year. But increasingly, as you know, it's actually becoming more difficult for these films to get distributed, sometimes even festival award-winning films. And a lot of the films just stayed in their country or just get distributed to a few countries. And especially, ironically, as we have many big players launching now, they are, as we've just seen, increasingly doing their own content or doing their own series. So actually, the problem of international film release and distribution, especially for independent and international film, is actually greater now than ever. So what's particularly interesting is that actually, and I think Michael said this a few times as well, is that films is more than just films, right? There are stories, and it's also about culture. So to quote Ted Hope, who knows it much better than I do, the producer of 21 Grams, he said, "What's great about movies is that they have a unique capacity to create empathy for people and actions we don't know and have not yet experienced." This is important because it's about to explain why we're setting out on the journey we're setting. So, about a year ago, we started to notice something very interesting. And this was, of course, as we have also seen, being accelerated by the COVID pandemic. Over 80% of our traffic is coming from language-related searches. And this makes sense because we have a lot of foreign language films. So, for example, I'm learning French, where can I watch French films? I'm learning Italian, where can I watch Italian films? So we ran a survey to our users. Over 70% said the number one reason they're coming to FILMDOO is they are learning a foreign language. Super, super, super interesting. And it makes sense, right? How can you learn a language if you don't understand the culture or the social context? There's another quote that I really like that mentions that learning a language, you can't separate the spice from the food. Learning a language, you need to understand the culture because the culture is like the spice of that food. And it's so important because actually films is the most powerful medium for you to understand the social and the cultural context and actually to take a language learner all the way to fluency, which is lacking in a lot of other language learning tools or apps out there. So actually with this discovery, and it was quite timely with what was about to happen over the next few months, was that we saw there was actually an opportunity in the VOD space, especially when it became more apparent that it's becoming more competitive just from the global players launching and just from the entertainment side. But by expanding into the online language learning market, it allows us to actually expand into a $350 billion edtech market and a $60 billion language learning market growing 20% year on year. Super exciting because it allows us to bring so much more value, new audiences to films, especially European films, from a language learning market. And a lot of these language learners really don't mind if they're older films or back catalog, right? So consequently, we've now developed a whole suite of new technology that allows you to play games while watching a film, whether in a classroom with other students or as part of self-study or homework, where effectively both teachers and students can learn languages and teach languages in a fun and easy way using films, or rather engaging or interactive films. So actually this is the gap that we're now differentiating. And it's so important, as we've seen, especially for niche players, to differentiate and find your own voices. And our voice is this international film, connecting the world through film, which still resonates, but also now bringing the power to learn languages through great films from around the world. So it's bringing films, games, and AI together. So why this is actually interesting, because during COVID, our traction didn't come just from the original FILMDOO.com website or from the B2C. It actually came from language learning institutions. So because we launched in January, we started getting approached a lot more by language tutors, independent language tutors, who are now using our platform to teach Spanish classes, English classes, using films and the technology that they can use with their students. But actually, even the bigger language learning institutions are now approaching us and say, oh wow, could you supply us with a whole catalog of films by this language that we could use for our teachers and for our classes to create learning material? So that was super interesting because our traction came from the B2B element and allows us to move to a whole new market. And COVID, as you know, overnight, schools, universities, language schools have all had to go online overnight. So online learning has become so much more important. Teachers, parents, tutors are all looking for ways to help their students stay more engaged. And guess what? The best way to stay engaged is through video and content. You know, students get bored after a while. It's just Zoom calls after Zoom calls, lessons after lessons online. But there's one thing people do 100% of the time, 100% every day, whether it's in our research or other research, and they watch some sort of content. Features, videos, YouTube video, short films, Facebook video. And that is how it's natural. Using films to help students stay engaged, especially now, engaged online, is so powerful. And that's why we're seeing a lot of interest now from the language learning institutions. So we have a technology which you can visit at FILMDOO.academy. That's a new site that we launched a few months ago. And you can play along a game while watching a film, test your knowledge, compete with other students. And these are some of the snapshots that I mentioned, where we're actually being used now by a number of language schools in trials with major universities in the US, in Asia, and in the UK. And that's our journey. So it hasn't been a straightforward journey because it hasn't been just on our website. We've actually expanded to a whole new sector, found a whole new type of market, expanded into education. But at the heart, it's the same thing, right? We're finding audiences for these films, we're finding new homes for these films, and we're connecting viewers who want to watch great content, but now they want to learn something too. So just before I wrap up for this little short introduction, I also have a very exciting announcement. So actually at Venice Film Festival, I'd like to let you know that actually FILMDOO is using this opportunity to announce an exciting new feature, our content upload feature, which will actually now allow us to work with a lot more independent filmmakers, producers, as well as, of course, content owners like sales and distributors, where from around the world, you'll now be able to upload your content directly into FILMDOO, and that makes it a lot more straightforward for the films to be selected and be part of not just the FILMDOO platform, but now our edutainment language learning platform as well. Thank you.
There you go, you got a little exclusive there. I don't know how we're going to do this thing here. I'm sure we're going to wreck this. We'll pass it along. Gianluca.
Hello, good morning. I'm Gianluca Guzzo. I'm the CEO and the co-founder of MYMOVIES.it, and I'm also general manager of Mashable Italia. This is a very important year for MYMOVIES because MYMOVIES was born exactly 20 years ago, exactly during the film festivals, Venice Film Festival, to the end of August and September. So it's a very, very important moment for us, for myself, and I'm happy to share this moment with you. Well, what I would like to do is share with you the most important steps in 20 years. Well, I will be very, very fast. The challenge is 20 years in 5 minutes. So 2000, during Venice Film Festival, we said it was basically a movie database. With cinema showtimes and coverage of film festivals. But as well, in 2000, the market got down, and yes, the end of the game, it was a destiny very, very short. It was very difficult for us between 2000 to 2004, before Google AdSense give to us the opportunity to monetize our traffic, because we had a lot of traffic as a many kind of website like our in that time. 2007 and 2010 was a very interesting and important period for web in general, before the social network arrived, obviously. And well, especially because we get the trust in ourselves, in our product, because Condé Nast, Allociné, and IBS get an offer to buy MyMovies in 2007. And we sold the 60% to IBS, is like Amazon in Italian Amazon. So finally, we get back some investor on MyMovies. In 2010, finally we launched our streaming platform. The name it is MYMOVIES Live because people can watch the movie everybody in the same moment. So it was like people have to book it was an SVOD basically, but people can watch the movie exactly in that time, exactly like in the cinema. You can see the seat plan. It was our answer to social networks, to Facebook, and maybe we wrong 2 times. We wrong 2 times because to make 2 mistakes. The first because it wasn't a good answer to Facebook, so we lose the opportunity to understand the social networks. We understood very well Google, but we didn't understand very well the social networks and Facebook. And the second one, because that model, it was strange because people want to watch finally the movie when they want. So when we proposed that kind of model, it wasn't very good for them. But we go ahead because we really believe in this model. In 2013, in meantime, IBS sell the share to La Repubblica, and the value, and they markups like more than 100% of the value. The value of MYMOVIES increase. But finally, in 2015, when Netflix arrived in Italy, we changed it a lot. Finally, we can express our power on digital, and Netflix have a deal with us for commercial and editorial partnership. And of course, MYMOVIES Live, we disinvest, we stop our investment on MYMOVIES Live. It was a really, really great period for us, especially for financial point of view, because all platforms who arrived in Italy, they start to work with us and invest on our audience. So we start to co-produce, to co-distribute. It was a really great moment. In meantime, La Repubblica sell to Exor Group, so FCA, Ferrari, Juventus, so Agnelli Group. Then 2010, and wow, the end of the games again, because if you see this slide, our business is really close to the cinema incoming. I mean, this is the admission, the blue one, and the red one is our audience. So we are really linked with the cinema. When the cinema closed, we lost everything again. So all the advertising from distributors and co-distribution and co-production, but also streaming platforms that they don't need us anymore because we heard before it was so great the traffic, so they don't need a promotion anymore. So it was a really difficult period, but we take again our streaming platform, MYMOVIES Live, and then we start to build streaming platforms for film festivals and cinemas. And so our model that it looks failed because people can watch the movie, everybody in the same moment can talk together. Suddenly it was a value because to share again when we are not anymore in the cinema, when we cannot share in the cinema because the cinema are closed, that kind of model become basically very interesting. So we start to build many platforms where the engine is MYMOVIES, but the look and feel is totally of the festival. So we worked with Il Cinema Ritrovato, with Far East Film Festival, with many. It was very interesting. This is the next. You can see the countdown, for example, and the schedule, the calendar. Between the festivals that we coverage, of course, also La Mostra del Cinema di Venezia, this edition, you can see it was Mila, the opening movie of Orizzonti. you can see also the plan seat, and the people can chat during they watch the movies. We have a limited numbers of places. It was 2,000, and we sold 2,000 subscriptions. Like after yesterday already we get the sold out. This is the model we use. So the plan and what is interesting. This is really the last slide. For example, the opening movie. It was a pro-opening Molecole. We make like almost 100,000 minutes of views. So around 500 people watch the movie from the start to the end. That's very interesting for that kind of movie. Oh, yes, I think that was the first. Thank you.
So, I'm the last one.
Great publicity shot, by the way, in the middle there. Just credit.
Okay, hi. My name is Katharina Jeschke. I'm the Secretary General of the International Music and Media Center. I'm happy to be here. First of all, I will introduce you to the IMZ. Then I will give you an overview of the impact of that had COVID on the performing arts film industry. I will give you some examples and use cases, and in the end we will have an outlook into the future, a quick one. So, who and what is the IMZ network? We are the international business network for the performing arts film industry. Our mission is to promote music and dance films through audiovisual media. All our activities help to create, to promote, to distribute, to stream performing arts films worldwide. In order to engage new audiences and to make performing arts accessible for present and future generations. Actually, we are quite old. We are a 59-year-old member organization based in Vienna, in Austria. And our members are film production companies, public and private broadcasters, performing arts institutions, distribution companies, VOD and streaming services. You see the members on the slide. Here are some more numbers. I just pick out some of them. We organized the largest trade fair for this performing arts film industry. It's called Avant-Première Music and Media Market. It takes place every year in February during the Berlinale and the European Film Market. About 600 experts from 330 organizations join us to present previews and to the latest films. About, I think last year, more than 500 films were presented within 4 days. And everybody comes to make business, to buy content, to take part in matchmaking and pitching sessions, and so on. We also, we take, of course, good care of our members, and we serve the industry by providing a contact database, for example, with thousands of direct contacts to the industry, and also by having a film database with about 27,000 film entries. In principle, we base all our activities on 4 pillars: market access and network. We connect the industry and build bridges to other sectors. Avant-Première, the market, is of course only one example. Another pillar is professionalization. We host an IMZ Academy. It's a masterclass series for professionals. Audience development is the third pillar. We program film festivals worldwide, and of course, last but not least, innovation and new business models, for which we join forces with other experts, and we work on innovative business models such as IMZ online services, B2B marketplace for film license trading, which I will explain a little bit later. So this was a short overview. I hope you understood a little bit what the IMZ is. Now let's dive into what concerns us today. In order to adapt to changing audiences, we have, of course, to understand how the performing arts film industry is affected by the changing environment. As you can imagine, the COVID crisis disrupted the business activities of the industry. And so being a member organization, we are in close contact with the industry and with our members, and we just talked to them and asked what the effects are. And here I give you some effects and tell you more about it. The effects on distributors were, for example, strong decrease of sales to broadcasters, but also to cinemas and in-flight entertainment. On the other hand, more sales to streaming services. Effects on film producers, of course, cancelled events led to film productions hanging in the air or being cancelled completely. At the same time, online projects are starting up. Performing arts institutions, you all know, concert houses and opera houses were shut down, so nothing happened actually. So it's a huge financial loss for them. But many concert halls and operas put their in-house film productions and recordings on their website to be in touch with their audience. Many of them even did this for free. So a new challenge arises with this, to reintroduce the prior business model and to get the audience pay again. And of course, for the performing arts institutions, the uncertainty of the time when they can reopen again and under which condition is, of course, also very, very challenging for them. Sorry, I was too quick. For the broadcasters, the effect on broadcasters, they have put on more content online, also more performing arts content on the media libraries. Actually, linear TV slots had to be reorganized due to cancelled events like Olympic Games, sports events, and so on, which at the same time has opened up more slots also for performing arts. And actually, I'm sure you remember there were huge live broadcasts and transmissions of concerts, also for solidarity concerts. And of course, the problem with not many fresh new films coming out. And the effect on video platforms, I mean, yeah, there are a lot of, I think you know actually, and we have talked about it a lot. Corona has led to significantly more use of video streaming services. Also, our members in the performing arts film industry confirm this. Platforms like Tact One, for example, experienced an increase of 100% in user numbers during spring, or Marquee TV offered a free 30-day trial and reported a 6-fold increase in registration in March and April alone. But of course, behind these remarkable figures, there lies again the challenge to keep the audience beyond the free trial and get them to pay. So these were some effects of Corona on the performing film industry. Coming to the question, how to engage a changing audience. Some players have come up with very diverse initiatives to not only cope, but also to leverage the situation. So, for example, this year marks Beethoven's 250th anniversary, and the spectacular production of his opera Fidelio directed actually by Christopher Waltz, was to premiere in March at the Theater an der Wien in Vienna, but then the lockdown happened. So the production was still carried out without an audience. It was recorded under very, very special conditions, and it was transmitted on international and national TV. Actually, a performance that would have been lost for the audience if it weren't for audiovisual media. Another example is the Salzburg Festival. I'm sure you've heard about it. They also celebrated the 100th anniversary this year. And it's a perfect example of how a festival of this dimension can even leverage this special situation. The festival took place with very, very strict controls and less productions in total. However, Arte, the public broadcaster, streamed 100 performances of the festival, which generated over 760,000 hits on Arte's channel, in comparison to only 70,000 people who could attend physically the festival. Actually, during lockdown, Arte Concert, the platform, became the virtual stage for the music scene. In April alone, Arte reached 1.6 million viewers across the globe. And the ZDF Arte production Hope at Home is a good example for this. The star violinist Daniel Hope played approximately 70 concerts from his living room, and only with this content, Arte generated more than 3.3 million hits on the site. In general, some big players in the industry, such as public broadcasters, are assuming the responsibility to preserve the diversity and the creativity of the music and dance film industry. Coming to VOD platforms, with the services, VOD platforms and performing arts streaming platforms like Medici TV and so on, they are providing, they are not a replacement for concert halls or operas or for the live experience, but they are actually an extension of the digital strategy of these houses. VOD platforms hook potential ticket buyers and help bring the audience back to the theater once the crisis is over. Yeah. I mean, one last example, Tact 1 offered a pay-per-view ticket and destined half of the revenues to the artists. So these kinds of examples we experienced. So to summarize what COVID has taught us so far, the performing arts film industry, music comes with an image. Music and dance films are more relevant than ever. Online offerings, for example, of our festivals, reach additional viewers beyond the regular audience, and digitalization is making great strides forward. Which brings us to the future. We believe in digitalization, not only audience-wise, but also in the ways we do business. We have to come up with new business models that add value to how we already do business and that benefit all players along the value chain. This is why, together with the IMZ members, we develop IMZ Online Services, a B2B marketplace for film license trading. IMZ Online Services is an online platform that supports the entire film license trading process, from searching productions through huge catalogs to making customized selling propositions and closing a deal. All of this goes hand in hand with a new set of standards developed by the industry, by the IMZ members, standards for metadata and standards for content-based asset identification. Sorry. The B2B marketplace is being developed with the IMZ members, so it is based on real experiences to meet real needs. And this is not only revolutionary, it is actually also the best quality control possible. What the COVID crisis has done it confirmed our track, our course we have taken, and actually accelerates the pace of our digitalization strategy. We will present the prototype of the IMZ online platform in October, so if you're interested in that, don't hesitate to contact me. And thank you for your attention.
Okay, so we got half an hour just to have a discussion on some of the themes. Listening to you all, we are looking, I think, quite specifically at what we've learned that we might take forward. And it seems to me there's three kind of areas that united a lot of those discussions. One was the partnership and cooperation and collaboration and engagement. And I'm very interested to hear how those have changed. Then there's the visibility. How do we get our services actually seen? Because you've got to get people there. And finally, it seems to me there's some really interesting changes coming on and opportunities within interaction, creating interactive relationships and personal relationships with audiences rather than the traditional. You're not a shop, you're a community, and I think this is a really important finding. So let's start with you, Jaume. You talked, I think I now know a term, which I have to thank Guy for, of onboarding, and it seemed to me this was a very, very important point in your presentation, is in interacting with the rest of industry. You are on mobiles, you're on TVs. How important is that to your business model, and how difficult is that going to be, do you think, as we approach a world where there's going to be more independent platforms wanting more space?
You need to be everywhere, basically. So you need to develop apps for all the smart TV, so the new devices, iOS and Android, and then of course it's so expensive to do it. It's maybe a good app for smart TV is like 20,000 at least on the lowest rate, and probably 50,000, 60,000 euros per app. So if you don't have money, you cannot enter to this VOD market on 2020, because it's quite expensive to develop a platform sustainable on all the devices that it need to be exploited. Let me talk about another thing, Michael, because I forgot to mention during my presentation, is how, so let's talk about money. Because it's important to notice that today Disney has released Mulan on, I don't know, the premium VOD service at 22 euros. It's people willing to pay 20 euros for a concert of Daniel Hope or Daniel Barenboim or whoever, a concert, or is willing to pay 20 euros for a festival, for a special screening? I think no. And this is the main problem. My movies show us a different way of approaching festivals. It's a limited number of seats watching films. I don't believe in this kind of approach, because I think it's frustrating for the audience, and it's okay, I want to watch the film and I cannot be able to watch it. In our case, and it has been a huge fight with the festivals, they demand this kind of approach. Say, okay, no, only 500 seats for release. And so only in 3 cases we accepted this limitation, because basically it's frustration, and then it brings the audience to the piracy side once again. So now we are 10 years ago. I think it makes no sense. The limited number of seats. Then there's the other problem is how long will it be available the film in the platform. For a festival, it's very hard to convince audience to say, no, stick at your main room at 10 p.m. to watch the premiere or Locarno premiere. Basically, people don't care about Locarno premieres. Probably in Switzerland, yes, but not in Spain. And Locarno shows a large number of masterpieces, but sadly, we need to search for a new audience instead of fighting for the small audience that actually watch Locarno films. And I think this is important in order to establish the new relationship between the festivals and the platform. I think it's an important thing to discuss.
It is, and again, we're coming down to the idea that that something new is coming. This is a new dynamic. This isn't. You said a great thing actually in the report. You're saying we've got to stop thinking like we're the end of the line, and we've got to stop being treated like we're the end of the line. And I mean, maybe you can come in on this yourself. I mean, it is. I mean, festivals. I just wonder how much festivals have got this now. You know, this. And there's a changed atmosphere, a changed thinking that was being expressed.
Yes. Yeah, well, about the limit is a limit that sales agents put. Of course, it's not because the film festivals or because of us. Of course, is a limit that because maybe our world premiere, for example. So they. In this case of Mostra del Cinema, the movies, we had 24 movies, but because they sold one movie in Italy, they canceled the movie. It was anymore available. So the limited is because the sales agents, of course, and also the timing, and I'm afraid that after COVID, it depends how, because for now the sales agents allows to the festival to go live, go in streaming. But what happens after that? That is the point. About the audience, I think is very, very interesting because the effort of each festival is very local. So if there is, I don't know, Udine Far East Film Festival, for example, it's just for Udine, but they selected the 40 wonderful movies for Asian movies, and is a pity don't give the opportunity to go in Sicily and let them to watch it. Well, actually, I think that's the short period is a value. Also, to think that you cannot watch it when you want to. We said before, okay, I don't know, during a presentation, said someone, okay, we spend like 15 minutes, 20 minutes to find a movie. In this case, the film festival, the programmer choose the movies for you, and is today this, tomorrow that, and after tomorrow this. So the guide about what you have to watch is by the festival, and that is a very interesting value for culture.
Yeah, I think you're both talking about a world where there are limits. There have been limits in the physical world. There is the time that the festival is on. There is the release schedules, which have traditionally been there if you see it as DVD, as the ancillary. But what you're talking about here is that's not the way audiences think. And it's not just the digital economy. They probably never thought that way. But you can now deal in an entirely different way with audience expectation. And I think what you're doing with the festivals is you're giving them the opportunity to say, you can have a wonderful physical experience in your space, but you're limiting, you are allowing yourself to be limited by realities that don't really exist anymore. There are many, many ways that you can go beyond that. That seems to be your argument.
Well, the point is that always we do almost like, because we collaborated with many film festivals, every week we have a new festivals. So it's interesting to think, like last week, for example, we had Il Cinema Ritrovato, so like 30 movies of 4K old movies and remasterized movies, and now we have the film movie of film festival. So each week the audience can find new movies, and this is very, very interesting because we change a lot, and they have the opportunity to watch a lot of movies, even if they don't know that kind of movies. In a traditional streaming platform, before to see a new movie, wow, often we go live and we watch, oh, nothing new. And in this case, because it's the festival that drive the program, every week you have new movies, new interesting movies. Of course, it's a independence, of course, you don't know about that, but you trust the programmer, you trust the film festival, and that gives the opportunity also the festivals to become to increase. Yeah.
But the question is that mainly the festivals programs like 100 films, and you don't have time to find about those 100 films. And we are not talking only about the guys who goes to the festival, but the guys who never have gone to any festival. So it's important. Let me share with you my Mexican Pretzel that is a really nice study case. My Mexican Pretzel is a documentary. It's a Spanish documentary that was premiered at Gijón Film Festival in November 2019. It's a found footage movie, it's a masterpiece, first time director. And when they premiered the film at Gijón, I think 30 people attend the screening, 30. So in a festival, so you know that some screenings in the festival for the times later or whatever, it's not, they don't have a full floor. And after Gijón, the film was international premiere in Rotterdam, January. I think it didn't win any award, and then it came the Film Festival, which is a Barcelona film festival. It took place at FILMIN, so because of the lockdown, and when we released the film, the festival took place during 10 days, and the film were available during those 10 days. I'm talking about 45 long feature films. When we released the film, nobody watched the film, my Mexican Pretzel. Because of the title, because of the argument, I don't know, the synopsis, or because of nobody knows the director. But somehow, some people, influencers, film reviewers, took notice about the film, and they began to recommend the movie. And then it was during the last 4 days of the festival, it was the most watched film. Wow. It was a huge success. It won the Audience Award, and then it will be released in cinemas in November 2020. So it's a good study case of how give the film its space. It brings you a new audience, an audience that probably never will have watched a found footage film about a Swiss family in the 40s. And now it's one of the most awaited films to be released in Spain in November. Probably it will win a Goya, hopefully.
Yeah, it's a really interesting case study, and again, it's one of the myths that the dream of a emerging first-time filmmaker who gets seen at a festival and becomes an instant star. It's a very rare thing, and I think a lot of festivals, from what you're saying, seem to now accept there are opportunities that came out of necessity, but maybe could be taken forward. I just want to ask you, Katharina, because when you're looking at the performing arts, I mean, that initially there must have been a degree of reluctance from opera companies and performing arts companies. What changed, that idea that you go online and you can have benefits rather than it undermining your audience? That was a difficult argument at the start, wasn't it? But it seems like there's an entirely changed attitude now and an understanding.
I mean, some of the performing arts institutions or opera houses, they have already started with digital strategies in the last years. So it was actually already there. And I mean, the Met is very successful with the live broadcasts, but also the Vienna State Opera began some years ago with that. So there was already the interest and experiences in that. And actually, I mean, they were forced to do something, and this completely lockdown really forced them to stay in contact with the audiences.
Yeah, I mean, necessity is a lot better driver of innovation than wanting to do something.
Yeah, and they were already prepared. Yeah. Oh, many of them were already prepared.
So I think we brought up the issue of money, the dirty issue of money, but the reality is there's got to be a financial element to this. And what you're saying is that there's been an understanding, perhaps in your sector, straight away that it brings money. And it seems to me that's a very relevant. It brings money and potentially recognition. Those combinations seem a great foundation for partnership.
Yeah.
let me come to you, Weerada, because you've got a difficult situation when you're doing partnerships. Not only are you trying to get, have you got the frustrations of the partnership with film and other content, you've got an education industry. You know, you gave us the big numbers and said that, you know, the billions of pounds in language learning, but it's also dominated by some pretty sharky kind of companies. I just wonder how you convince people, how do you build partnership and get them to understand what you're doing?
Well, actually, that's why we're very proud of the great films that we've built, because, you know, that's the value. You know, a lot of these, especially technology companies or education companies, they don't have films, or they don't have access to such a great catalog of films, especially legal films, award-winning films, well-curated films. A lot of these language learning institutions or a technology company, they actually use pirate content sometimes, pulled from YouTube or Vimeo, or short little clips, or sometimes they create their own short film, but it's very unauthentic. Like, are you waiting for a bus? Yes, I am. So it's not really authentic over the long time. But actually start with the value, and actually it is the film that is our differentiator. I don't go around saying I'm an edtech company. That is something that we're not aiming to do. Films, stories, connecting the world is still the heart of what we do, and we will continue to be a VOD, just allowing us to expand into a different market. So the films and the content actually come first, and that allows us to teach cultures and languages.
It's a really nice way to go into the next little section of this discussion, and you've all got some quite useful contributions here, but how you interact with audiences, how that technology works, seems to me the area where we've still got loads to learn. Just tell us, you mentioned a word I hate, but it makes sense. Gamification seems to me quite an important part of your discussion. Just give us a sense of how you developed gamification as an idea.
Yes, so gamification in this sense, it's not video game where you can choose the character, and they are of course new media where you can actually choose the character, choose the ending, and that's a whole type of different new film. But in this sense, our game is that you're still watching a film, but it allows the teachers or the language schools to put questions or game features over the film. So basically, while you're watching a film, the students can play games, mostly related to language learning questions, over the film. So actually, you're not interrupting the film viewing experience. So for example, you could have a parent who could be fluent in Spanish, but the kids are not fluent in Spanish. So the parents could watch it without game features, but the children could be playing games and answering some questions at the same time, and then at the end of the film you can see who has the highest score. So in this sense, I think it is important to say we are introducing game features, we are not gamifying the film. So there's a slight difference.
Yeah, but what I thought was really interesting that's more general is one of the problems we have in film, and I think curation and the thematic approach you're taking is it's quite intimidating when you see huge numbers of films on a site, and some sense of progress, some sense that when you go in, you've got a way, rather than it just being this astonishingly large number. It's that sense that the game is also some validation, some kind of sense that I'm progressing here. And I think you're playing with some of those ideas already. And I'll come to you two, because I think both of you, it's really where the technology, I think, is playing a big part. And technology obviously covers data analysis, it covers interactivity, or it covers all kinds of things. But we'll start with you, Jaume. You said you had developed those changes. What comes first? Is it the immediate interactive experience, or is it part of a bigger bundle? Clearly we need to win audiences when they get in, and they're going to need to feel that there's something different about you. Just give us a sense of the psychology of your redesign.
I think we need to reach to the older audience, so let's say plus 60 years old, and then in order to reach them filming times could be a nice door of entrance. No? So it's like, it's useful, it's talking about history and filming history and Europe history, the history of Europe, sorry. On one side. On the other side, so the youngest generation, the conversation is basically dominated by Netflix and Amazon. And they need like some guidance to enter to this art house independent cinema. They don't know, okay, they come to film and say, okay, we have 15,000 titles, but which I will watch first if I will want to know better about the classical movies. So it's Rossellini before Renoir or before Chaplin, and then, oh, no, you have to watch 100 titles. No, come on, it's impossible. And then for that reason, we develop a special site on the Filming Times, which is the history of cinema. And then it's like, okay, you don't know any clue about classical movies, then go there, and then you will find like the first steps in order to trying to develop a taste for classical cinema. So I think we are on the oldest range, so plus 60, we have succeeded on doing the Filming Times, but unfortunately for the youngest generation, Filming Times doesn't work as good as we expected. Probably now, when they will be back at school, we'll have a second chance. But thanks to Instagram, and we are quite strong cinephile base in Instagram with 75,000 followers on Instagram and 200,000 on Facebook and Twitter, then we can reach to younger generation and then try to bring them some new appetites for classical cinema.
So I mean, it seems to me you're doing two things separately. You make it easy with, as you mentioned earlier, the user experience is easy in terms of the number of buttons you press. But what you're also trying to do is to overcome what I think we all fail at miserably in the film world, which is we love the exclusivity. You know, we love the term cinephile suggests something which is excluding as well as exclusive. So just as pressing a button is easy, you're also trying to make it feel comfortable to make choices which in the real world feel like quite a big thing. And again, I guess my Mexican pretzel example is one in which you can argue that people who might never have looked at such a thing would have done it. But it's that link of technology and psychology that seems to me important. And
there's another sign of hope, because during this TikTok age, we released La Flor, which is a 24 hours film by Mariano Ginás, and Shoah, which is also a 6-hour film, and then today Love the Earth. 3 latest works, 8 hours more or less each one. And La Flor was one of the most watched films during the lockdown, and even Shoah. So there's an audience even for those kind of huge demanding movies at home.
Yeah, I mean, everyone here is incredibly young, I can see. But if you were older, I mean, we used to get introduced to film by it being on terrestrial television. That's how it worked, and it was in peak time. But you're not going to see a Robert Bresson film in peak time anymore. So it's a challenge, but it's one that you're taking on. Gianluca, you've had to sell. I mean, you're building platforms for festivals. Yeah. I just wondered again that psychology of you know, do you get that sense that they want to broaden that audience and that your technology is helping?
Oh yes, I think our platform, but basically because I showed you before in 2010 there is the sense of a community. The sense of community is built by the film festivals, of course. And for example, in another example, we built a platform for cinemas also in Mio Cinema. And in this case, the share, it was like 40% to the cinema, 40% to the distributors, 20% to the platform. And the cinemas, they were closed. They start to promote a streaming platform. And it was very interesting because a new audience arrived to to have a new approach with the streaming platforms, because we have also an help desk, and they write how to put the subtitle or some really easy question like yeah, maybe it's the first time that someone watch a movie in streaming. So we have like ambassadors in local, in cinemas, in cities, because of the film festivals, in one way. Another way, we give to the film festivals all our knowledges in 20 years of digital. So we have a good, an important database of users. And what is very interesting, I think this is, our platform is like collaborative platform, because always when a new film festival decided to work with our platforms, they ask, oh, I would like to have this, I would like to have that, and always increase. So it's like collaborative platform also for audience, because the registration is on MYMOVIES. So always increase, because all film festivals put their advertising, their communication. So the next year, I think, the next Far East Film Festival, for example, I'm sure that will be bigger than before, because all festivals after Far East helps the next edition of a Far East.
Okay, yeah, I mean, it is a really interesting thing that combination of being able to be comfortable with the financial rewards, which are incredibly important, that will make people feel comfortable to do the partnership, but that partnership provides benefits that actually are probably much more important over the long term. We've only got 5 minutes, so I just wanted to finish this really by, it seems to me there's something big is going to happen. So during lockdown, time was wonderful. There was time to do things, and this constant theme comes up with VOD platforms that for the first time we got this opportunity to actually explore. But that time's gone. So I just want basically one sentence from you. We've got to get visibility and we've got to get time. And is there anything that you think has emerged from this lockdown period or looking forward that maybe is the key, might unlock those opportunities in the post-COVID period? And again, that post-COVID period may be more difficult economically and in terms of business than the lockdown itself.
Yes. Well, I think there are a lot of opportunities. If before lockdown it was difficult for independent movie, at least in Italy, to find a market after the cinemas. So we were also a co-distributor, so we know well that kind of problem. So after the cinema, for independent movie, yes, of course the TVs, but on VOD there wasn't any more market anymore. But now we discovered actually, and we can talk also about money, that people would like to watch, love to watch independent movies. They want to find new movies. That's what they want to do. And another important thing, I mean, 40,000 euros is not a lot for festivals, but is important for a film festival, because because they make film festivals with 200,000 euros. So if Far East Film Festival sell 40,000 euros in streaming, is a lot of incoming for them. So
lockdown answer one is yes, the market's expanding, but I think the really significant thing for you is if people discover things, they may be more likely to carry that on. And the assumption that it's not just about the time they had then. 3 months is time. I think psychologists say 3 months is the time when habits can become permanent. So that's positive. Jaume, can you give us a good positive thing that we can take away?
We have more subscribers than in March. So basically, the guys who discovered the platform during the lockdown period stayed to they keep paying for the subscription. This is a good thing. But question will be, because I think Probably in 1 year we will have another roundtable like this one, another debate, and then we have been able to see the magnitude of the changes that will come. Mulan is the first step. I don't know. It's important because it's a studio doing something quite unusual, no? So, and it's not Trolls, the second worldwide tour. It's another thing. And then the festivals, because what will happen with the festivals? Because it's not sustainable for them, maybe to do this kind of specific events for the upcoming years. I don't know how many cinemas will survive if this lockdown will be again, because in Spain, for instance, the COVID cases now rises again, and let's see, it's a lot of uncertainty.
So, I mean, VOD's got a lot resting on it. I mean, and I think the industry perhaps is more aware there's a lot resting on it. You've got 30 seconds each to finish. Tell us something, Weerada, that we can take away from this period that will suggest where we can go next and where we're going to keep building on what we achieved during that period.
Well, we're not going back the way we were. That much I know for sure. This time people have allowed them to appreciate more life at home, take a pause. I don't need to be in the office and travel 2 hours one way. I can, work more remotely. So once they have that choice, and companies are allowing that, they can have more time to take up hobbies, play music, watch more films. So actually, on the whole, people have had the opportunity to discover. They will be more eager to know that there's a world out there. But actually, we also didn't really touch upon, but inability to travel will still exist for the foreseeable future. So that's where films still come in. People are still curious about the world. They might miss a place they've traveled to. So actually, there is something there around films filling that void to help people connect, travel, even escape.
So it's still going to be our world. We'll still be in our kitchens, but those habits are going to stay. That's the key there.
There will be an equilibrium, but we won't know the world as we knew before, for sure.
And finally, Katharina, you get the final 30 seconds.
I think it's really time for collaboration, and it's really time to share experiences and learn from each other, to develop new models, new business models, but really share the experience, and think that's my word.
Very concise and to the point, because that's exactly it. So we've got a change in audience behaviour, change in audience habits. I'd say the VOD platforms that we got here, all of you adapted, and there's a kind of flexibility and pragmatism about the sector. So you learned a lot, I would think, during that period anyway. The industry needs that to happen because it needs those connections to be there. I'd say the broader argument, perhaps the more exciting argument, is we have changed as audiences, we are more open, we want to connect, and maybe our forced confinement has made our appetite for seeing the bigger world greater than ever, which I think is a pretty smart way to finish. I'm going to meet my mate Vivaldi, we're going to steal a gondola, and we're going to make a TikTok. So I don't know what you're doing this evening, but whatever it is, enjoy, and thanks to the panel.